Welcome to Rontape. A senior gentleman called Han Piju holds a part-time position as a server in a diner. His youthful colleagues adore him due to his amiable disposition and excellent etiquette. Throughout the festive period, he typically dons a Santa costume and delights the patrons at the eatery. His nearest co-worker is a young adult in his 20s named Ingu. They frequently watch out for each other and also share a complex handshake routine. One day, Han gets a call from his offspring and becomes unresponsive. Ingu, observing the shift in his demeanor, asks if anything is amiss. Han doesn't answer his query and merely walks off. Later, we witness him hastening to the hospital to visit his recently deceased spouse. He clasps her hand and expresses his pride in her, assuring her they'll reunite soon in the hereafter. Subsequently, the narrative transitions to the funeral of Han's wife, where numerous individuals convey their sympathies to him. Han then engages in a short discussion with his physician, who expresses concern for his well-being. The doctor provides Han with a medication container to alleviate his discomfort. Following this, the doctor inquires if Han is truly committed to executing his scheme. Han replies that he has satisfied all his duties as a spouse and parent, and nothing can hold him back now. That night, Han accesses the storeroom and unveils a sizable corkboard laden with newspaper articles and additional information concerning his strategy. He proceeds to film himself, stating that he suffers from a brain tumor and Alzheimer's disease. Additionally, he discloses his intention to eliminate 5 individuals responsible for the devastation of his family during Japan's rule in Korea. He proceeds to recount the agonies his family experienced. Initially, his father faced false accusations, was apprehended, and beaten to death. Subsequently, his mother, unable to bear her spouse's torment, succumbed to despair. His elder brother, misled by a companion, perished in a dreadful mine. Lastly, his elder sister became a concubine for Japanese soldiers and, overwhelmed by shame, committed the unspeakable upon returning home. As Han has a habit of forgetting, he etches the culprits' names on his digits. Subsequently, he unearths an ancient firearm. The following day, Han encounters Ingu at an eatery and requests him to serve as his chauffeur for several days. Initially, Ingu is astonished by the unforeseen solicitation and seeks clarification. Han justifies his request, citing his advanced years and absence of a driving permit, necessitating a driver. Han also assures Ingu he will retain his present employment and receive compensation. Subsequently, the duo proceeds to the vehicle. Ingui is astonished to discover it's a Porsche. He questions it, and Han reveals it's an unregistered vehicle he's leasing for 7 days. Eventually, they arrive at their initial stop, a medical facility. Han departs, directing Ingu not to linger or contact him until he initiates communication. Han proceeds to scrutinize his hospital blueprint. Following this, he accesses the medical center and employs his seniority to secure a seat from a pair. It later becomes apparent that he desired that particular spot due to its absence from CCTV coverage. Later at midday, a custodian rouses Han, informing him that he cannot slumber in the facility. Han recollects his purpose for being there while gazing at the inscribed names on his digits and observing the irritable spouse of the administrator. As Han prepares to execute his scheme, Inju emerges unanticipatedly, surprising him. Han, infuriated, questions why he didn't abide by instructions, but Inju insists he was concerned since over 5 hours had elapsed. Han persistently encourages Inju to head home, claiming he has crucial tasks. Consequently, Inju becomes annoyed, admonishing Han not to be a jerk before departing. Subsequently, Han employs a lengthy cloth strip to unlock a door, reaching the director. Upon entering, he rouses his initial target by splashing water onto his face. The director, bound to the bed, angrily inquires Han's identity. Han reveals that the director murdered his innocent father long ago, warranting his death. Frightened, the director begs for mercy, but Han smothers his face with a pillow and fires 2 shots, causing immediate death. Eventually, police appear at the crime scene, and the custodian informs Chief Kong about a dubious man she observed departing the previous evening. In another location, at a gaming arcade, Inju gets a message from a friend about the hospital director's demise. A man departing the hospital lobby late at night is considered the primary suspect. Inju is stunned to discover he is the man in the news. Simultaneously, he receives a message from Han, indicating the subsequent destination. The subsequent objective involves an author attending a press conference. As he concludes and readies for departure, Han instructs Inju to follow his vehicle. Inju mentions the incident from the day before, as well as being labeled a suspect. Nonetheless, Han dismisses this and encourages Inju to concentrate on the mission. Shortly thereafter, upon the author's return home, Han confronts him, reminiscing about earlier times. Annoyed, the author demands to know Han's identity. Han discloses he's the sibling of the individual duped by the author and forced into mind labor. With this revelation, he shoots the man twice, since his silencer is broken. The gunshot's volume enables Inju to hear. Consequently, he hastens to the scene, only to discover a surprising tableau involving Han and the lifeless author. Paralyzed by shock, Inju trembles in fear until Han tells him the author is deceased, and they must depart. Subsequently, police reach the location and initiate an inquiry. One officer discovers a photo of the writer alongside the recently deceased filmmaker and 2 others. Shifting to Han, he stirs from a nightmare about his late sibling and realizes he's at Inju's residence. He switches on the television and sees that news networks are pursuing the culprit, specifically Inju. This alarms the latter, but Han reassures him, stating the police won't identify him from that perspective. He also vows to employ every means within his power to prevent Inju from being accused. As their conversation progresses, unexpectedly, a pair of toughs appear. It emerges that Inju had procured a loan from them for his father's medical bills, so they've arrived to request repayment. When Inju admits his inability to pay, the toughs create a disturbance. Luckily, Han steps in and pledges to settle the debt within a week. This appeases the toughs, who then depart. Afterward, Han presents Inju with a cash-filled bag, ample to clear all his debts. This lifts Inju's spirits somewhat, and he seizes the chance to question Han about his motive for committing murder. The elderly gentleman elucidates everything from the beginning, while also disclosing his intent to eliminate 3 additional individuals. Upon hearing this, Inju's countenance rapidly transforms. Meanwhile, at the police headquarters, officers deliberate about who will take charge of the Japanese army festivities. Chief Kong promptly offers himself once he discovers that the Japanese official he spotted in a photo at the writer's home will attend. Next, the focus transitions to the gathering, where Han bypasses security using a counterfeit identification. Shortly thereafter, he spots the Japanese official and recollects the period when his sister was coerced into servitude as a concubine. Later on, Han proceeds to the restroom where he successfully assembles an explosive from the materials he carried. He then retrieves his firearm from its concealed location. After his departure, a wary Chief Kong inspects the restroom only to find no trace of evidence. In the following scene, the Japanese official steps onto the platform to deliver his address. Still distrustful of Han, Chief Kong instructs his fellow officers to watch him closely. They promptly disperse and survey the vicinity. One officer discovers that Han had used the deceased writer's identification. Disturbed, they commence their search for him, but at that moment, Han triggers the explosive, shrouding the room in smoke. After some time, another explosion ensues, plunging the area into pandemonium. As the officers attempt to usher the Japanese official to safety, Han suddenly appears, abducting him. Securing the door, he drags the official to the elevator and mercilessly kills him. Kong is already on the ground level, ready to apprehend the culprit, but when the elevator doors part, he only sees the Japanese official's lifeless body. Concurrently, the severely wounded Han summons Ingu and successfully escapes the scene. Subsequently, Han regains consciousness in his companion's infirmary and requests a final favor from Ingu to be recorded in the video. Han elaborates on his upcoming target, Kim, who ruined countless Korean households to amass wealth and prestige. Additionally, he unveils all of Kim's misdeeds, for which he never faced repercussions. Instead, he was hailed as a military hero. Later, Kim's henchmen apprehend the duo. On the verge of execution, Ingu claims to possess a duplicate of the film elsewhere. Consequently, he escorts them to the residence of the infamous thugs, from whom he had borrowed money. Upon encountering each other, the two factions engage in a fierce battle. Miraculously, Han rescues Ingu. He also expresses regret for involving him in the ordeal and gratitude for his support. Prior to the police's arrival at the combat site, Han makes his escape in his Porsche. However, Ingu isn't as fortunate since Officer Kong captures him. The scene transitions to the following day, with numerous military personnel celebrating Kim's statue unveiling. Kim, donning his military uniform, continues to discuss his role in protecting Korea. Han remembers a similar speech but in favor of Japan. Subsequently, Han draws his gun and aims it at Kim's granddaughter. He then coerces the wicked general into confessing his past misdeeds. Left with no alternatives, Kim eventually comes clean. He proceeds to reveal his allegiance to the Japanese government, incarceration of those who spoke Korean, encouragement of Korean youth to support Japan, and the deception of numerous Korean women into becoming Japanese concubines, including Han's sister. Upon hearing this, everyone, even Kim's granddaughter, is shocked by the revelation. Next, Han aims the gun at Kim, shooting him fatally, and declares they'll reunite in hell. Eventually, Kong and Yu reach the location. You see Han, weapon in hand, encircled by police officers. Ingu comments on the strangeness of Han's arrest before eliminating his fifth victim. But upon reflection, he grasps that the final target is, in fact, Han himself. We are subsequently transported to a prior time where Kong encounters his sibling garbed as a Japanese trooper. This startles the latter, who questions if he comprehends he's donning the identical attire as the soldiers who tormented her. Han retorts, unconcerned about her experiences. This implies he contributed to his family's downfall. Returning to the present, when Han is on the verge of ending his life, Ingu materializes, pleading for him to desist. He additionally informs Han that perpetrating such an act would render his quest for justice meaningless. Overwhelmed by these revelations, Han becomes tearful and ultimately relinquishes the firearm. In the closing sequence, Ingu pays a visit to Han in confinement, who can no longer identify him due to dementia. Nevertheless, Han recalls their distinctive handshake, eliciting emotions from Ingu. The film concludes with the pair embracing, reminiscent of their former days.